How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers 2019 Season 4 Week 10 Around the NCAA Recap Show. We didn't play this week, so we don't have our own game to recap, but we will take a look at the action that happened around the country so we can precursor and give you a preface before the first college football playoff rankings of this season come out. Louisville knocked off Syracuse in ACC play. Virginia got bowl eligible already, 31-26 by beating Duke. NC State smoked Utah. Florida State just escaped BYU in overtime. And the biggest game of the week in the ACC, Wake Forest put a hurting on Clemson in Death Valley. Clemson gave up 59 points at home to Wake Forest. Just a ridiculous scoreline for them to lose to Wake by. UCLA goes to 9-0, so they're looking like a shoo-in for the Pac-12 championship game right now. Oklahoma won, Kansas State won. All the high-ranked teams won for the most part. Arkansas State beat South Alabama, Notre Dame over Navy, Ohio State easy over Rutgers, Stanford over Arizona, Auburn, knocked off Arkansas 45-37. Fantastic game there. They won by 8. NC State over Utah, like we mentioned. Oklahoma State won. UAB put a hurting on UTEP 45-10, so they're for real. And LSU in a instant classic game of the week. They won on a last-second field goal, 40-37. They came back. They were actually down 37-30. They came back, tied it at 37, and then won with a game-winning field goal. So they won 40-37. And Houston loses. That's the biggest loss, and really one of the only top 25 teams that lost. Houston no longer unbeaten after losing to SMU. Kendall Hinton, 8 touchdowns, 450 yards. 120 rushing, 320 passing in the victory over Clemson. Incredible game. 8 touchdowns. He had all the touchdowns for Wake, or somehow I think he had 6 passing, 2 rushing. Incredible. Ronnie Elam, 4 picks in a game for Texas A&M. So just incredible performances all around. ACC Defensive Player of the Week, a little less exciting. Forced fumble and an int for sophomore Benny Fox. But Kendall Hinton, take a bow. He's been putting together a huge season. I wouldn't be surprised if he has 1 or 2 more games like that. If he's in the Heisman race, he might not win, but at least in contention. Joe Burrow, 4 touchdowns, 370 yards passing in the victory over Bama. So he's still top of the rankings. Ty Story, big game, 3 touchdowns in the loss to Auburn, so he moves up a little bit. South Carolina halfback Rico Dowdell is 4th in the Heisman rankings. BJ Emmons had a kick return touchdown in the loss to LSU. Only had, I think, 90 yards rushing on like 30 carries. Not a great game running the ball, so he stays at 5th in the Heisman race. But Burrow puts up another great performance for the now number 1 in the country LSU Tigers. They were number 1 for a majority of last season as well, before they ended up losing in the college football playoff to Washington, who then ended up claiming the number 1 spot. They're 1 again. Washington is not anywhere near number 1 this season. They're really struggling this year. Already 4 losses on the season. LSU number 1, though. Ohio State jumps up to 2. Bama's all the way back to 6 with their loss. So everybody from 6 down moved up. UAB's up to 7 as an unbeaten now. Houston gets smoked. They're way down after their loss. We jump up to 13th, not even having to play, because Houston falls all the way back to 16 with their loss. Arkansas falls back to 17, only down 3 spots with their loss to now number 4 Auburn. For the most part, a lot of teams had byes, though, and really nobody in the top 25 for the most part lost, other than Wake is now in the rankings at 23. Clemson is now out of the rankings after losing to Wake Forest, but they're just on the outside. They're basically number 26 if you look at who's receiving votes. So if a team in the low 20s loses, Clemson will already be back in the top 25. But I think this is the first time they've been out of the top 25 in this dynasty. I think we're in season 4 of this dynasty. I think this is the first year that they've been out of the top, or the first week that they've been out of the top 25 in the whole thing. They won the first 2 national titles, you remember, and then last year, I mean, they were finished in the top 10. So they've been incredible. Top 4 now is LSU, Ohio State, Penn State, Auburn. Ohio State and Penn State will play each other not this coming week, but the week after. So if they both stay unbeaten, that'll set up another incredible game, probably 2 versus 3. Auburn's at 4, UCLA's at 5. Bama at 6, of course. We're up to 11, incredibly. We bump up 3 spots without even playing. So we're at least in the hunt, you have to say, if results will fall our way. But it's going to be a very tough ask. We are still top of the ACC Coastal. Not much change because there weren't really a ton of Coastal Division games. But us and North Carolina are top there. And like I mentioned, Wake won against Clemson. So now they're 4-1 in the ACC Atlantic. NC State also 4-1 in the ACC Atlantic. And look who their last game is against at the end of the season. They both finished playing Louisville, interestingly, in back-to-back weeks. And then they play each other. Wake Forest will be home. That could be a game for the ACC Atlantic Division title. That's going to be an incredible race to see how things go. Wake, they've just been scoring points at will versus NC State's got a fantastic defense. So that'll be really fun to be able to watch that game. ACC this week, we're taking on Georgia Tech away. They've struggled in ACC play, but always give us a tough game. Clemson, Florida State, another big game around the ACC as Clemson looks to get back to winning ways. North Carolina, Virginia Tech, both of them still trying to potentially come out on top in the ACC Atlantic Division. Around the country, UCF and our former quarterback Ben DiNucci trying to knock down number 15 Cincinnati. Georgia in Notre Dame, huge non-conference game, always a fun one to watch. The Bulldogs taking on the Fighting Irish in South Bend should be a fantastic game, one of the games of the week. Michigan State against Ohio State. Like I said, Ohio State has Penn State next week, but Michigan State could give them a tough game. They're a very strong team. They gave Alabama a tough one, so we'll see how that goes. Kansas State 6-1, so they're under the radar with just one loss. They're taking on a solid West Virginia team at Mountaineer Field. Should be a good game. Penn State away at Michigan. Again, Penn State looking to avoid that hurdle. Jim Harbaugh really needs a win or he'll really be on the hot seat for the Wolverines. That should be a good contest. South Carolina and Florida, battle of Heisman finalists Rico Dowdell and Felipe Franks, both in the top 5 right now. So that should be a good matchup between a couple of solid SEC schools. UNC Virginia Tech, ranked battle in the ACC Coastal Division. You can see a lot of really good games this week. Last week there were not a ton. This week is fantastic. USC, they went winless last season, 0-12. They're 7-2 this season. New coach Robert Prunty, Pellerin, their quarterback to transfer from Ole Miss. If they can be back, they'll beat Stanford. And then for us, of course, Pitt taking on Georgia Tech. They're 4-4 this season, 1-4 in ACC play. But where they've incredibly succeeded, Lane Kiffin is their head coach now, and he has brought a complete change to their offense. They're the number 5 passing offense in the country. You'll remember last year was his first year in charge. They were like a 50-50 rush pass team, like 200 and 200. Now they've completely went in the direction of passing. Number 10 offense in the country. They score pretty well, but they don't have a great defense, and they really haven't beaten anybody substantial. They did beat Virginia Tech this season, but other than that, when we look at their schedule, it's not been spectacular. Kenny Pickett nearing 2,000 yards on the season. His touchdown interception ratio has really improved over the last couple of games. I think it went from like 10-9 to 15-9 now. So he's done a nice job improving there. Sibley's been solid for us, not great, but okay. Jay Keys, of course, a stellar freshman performance as our top receiver. Taquan Marshall is Georgia Tech's quarterback, and he's really been incredible. What's going to be tough is he's their leading rusher at 63 yards a game, and their quarterback, 21 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. Howell has 105 yards per game. So they're explosive, and they have a mobile quarterback. We saw what happened last week with Bryce Perkins. Mobile quarterbacks are tough for us to defend, so hopefully we can keep somebody on him all game and not let him beat us up with his legs, force him to beat us with his arms, because he's not a great thrower in spite of all those yards. But if we look at Georgia Tech's schedule, like we mentioned, they beat an FCS school, Georgia State, Vandy, all teams that stink. They did beat Virginia Tech, though, who's number 19 in the country, and every other loss they've had, one possession. NC State, Wake, Virginia, and UNC, 4 very good teams. They lost to all of them in one possession games. So they're one possession in 4 different games, which is a lot, obviously, but they're 4 possessions essentially away from being undefeated right now. So they're definitely not going to be an easy game. Of course, playing in Georgia will make it a little bit tougher because we've always fared a little bit better at home. So let me know in the comments, do any of those unbeaten teams I showed you that have big games, do they fall this week? What's going to happen with us taking on Georgia Tech? Will we come away with a victory? What's the final score going to be? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. And as always, guys, hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.